where schools could go. This video looks at not only where schools could go, but I would argue where schools should go. It's a potential direction for a very different type of learning and for a very different type of teaching that focuses on student-centered learning through differentiated instruction, focusing more on mastery of topics and appropriately challenging students on a daily basis. It uses a blended classroom, using technology to create a student-centered learning environment. A blended classroom is one that combines online learning and traditional learning to meet the needs of a student. It uses Moodle. Moodle is a software. It's the platform for delivering the course. Moodle is the technology that we're using, but it's the technology that's driven by pedagogy. Moodle is simply a way in which we can carry over and package a course. In our Moodle package course, one of the frequently used components is our computer applets. Computer applets are programs that enable students to learn through discovery. So for example, this is one computer applet where students were looking at Riemann sums and starting to understand the idea of what happens when you increase the number of intervals and how that leads toward the discovery of the definite integral. These computer applets really work for a hands-on learning approach so that students that are more visual learners or experiential learners can have the material pop for them and have it make total sense. Another component of the Moodle-driven online learning is video learning. This is from one of the students. She says, I love the way we are running classes. In previous classes, I have spent multiple hours trying to complete the homework because I did not understand the material. Now I know I am going to spend a set amount of time on the videos, and if I have any questions, I can ask them in class. I seem to understand this topic very well and feel more confident than I have in the past. It's much more efficient. I can also rewind. I honestly don't have any suggestions for changes. I think it's going very well. Well, I would say that we can change it, we can improve it, but the idea is by watching videos at home, students are able to interact with the material in a very comfortable and safe way. They can pause, rewind, stop, uh, and they're doing it without the pressure of other students and a teacher judging them in terms of the speed at which they are learning. We use YouTube videos so that students at any time can access them as long as they have online connection. And the key component for this Moodle-driven packaged course are the summary questions that occur after students have done the applets, after students have done the video learning. The summary questions are a way for students to ensure that they really understand the key ideas of a given topic. And the summary questions are submitted online through Moodle, and the teacher will receive these questions, look at them, and get back to the students before they enter class. Therefore, teachers have an understanding which students understand the key ideas, which students don't, so it can customize their instruction as they go into the next class. As this is discussing a math class, we have a key equation here, which is that group work plus individual attention equals class time. Class time is dedicated to problem solving, to application, and we do it in groups of 3 so that there can be total collaboration. Students can be seen as teachers, they are seen as teachers and learners, and students work together to create a vibrant, dynamic learning experience. Another feedback from students says people are learning a lot quicker, and it's easier to ask questions in class on a problem than it would be if we were doing these problems for homework. Working in groups of 3 is also helpful because the other kids can help. Students get that this is working, and they are enjoying the process and feeling very confident and capable in this class. So support for this type of learning, I'm drawing from a book by Clayton Christensen called Disrupting Class. And in this book, Christensen says, student-centric learning opens the door for students to learn in ways that match their intelligence types, hence the use of video learning and applets. So they match their intelligence types in the places and at the paces they prefer by combining content in customized sequences. So as far as the paces, let me say, as far as learning at the right pace, is students do not all need to learn at the same pace day to day to day to day. When students want to learn quicker, they can learn quicker. The course is there. Um, Everything they need to go through an entire course is in front of them from day one. And if a student needs to slow down, they can slow down. They don't need to worry about kind of trying to catch up and having this backlog of misunderstanding and misconceptions. They work at their appropriate pace. So teachers then serve as professional learning coaches and content architects. That becomes our role to help individual students progress. And they can be a guide on the stage, not a sage on the stage. So no longer will a teacher be standing up in front of the class telling the students how much they know, being seen as the knower of all things. Rather, the teacher is going to be seen as a coach, as a motivator, as someone who can create very effective content construction that can create effective curriculum so that students can learn effectively. And key to this is using Kahn's proficiency model. So what creates the pace of a student's learning isn't the teacher needing to get through a certain amount of material. Rather, the pace of a student is completely dependent on the speed at which they acquire and become proficient or excellent at a given topic. So only when a student has demonstrated the ability to do something proficiently can they move on. Also, with this model, students are able to learn where they learn best. Now, students will learn where they learn best. That's a matter of when they learn best, where they learn best, how they learn best. And from a great TED Talk by Jason Fried, he writes, if you ask people the question, where do you really need to go when you need to get something done? Typically, you get three kinds of answers. One is a kind of place or a location or a room. Another one is a moving object, and a third is time. Speaking of the first and the third, students now can be in a comfortable place, a place that sort of works for them, whether it's going to the library or being in their bedroom at their desk, or whether it's wherever they want to learn best. If it's outside, then they can learn outside. They choose where they're watching the videos, where they're watching the applets, where they're writing the summary questions, wherever they do this best, and students know where they do this best. Wherever they do this best, that's where they go. And the third feature that Fried writes about is time. Some students work better in the morning, some at night, some in the middle of the day. And what I found in looking at the summary questions from Moodle, students frequently, almost consistently, submit their answers at the same time every day. A given student, rather, will submit their answers at the same time every day. So student A might always respond at 11 o'clock at night. Student B might always be doing them at 6:30 in the morning. Student C might always be doing it right before class. But the consistency is what's important, because to me it suggests that students are recognizing when they can do it most effectively and then doing the work at that time. So we're looking for student-centered learning, differentiated instruction, mastery-driven, and appropriately challenging work. So we have the car and we've got the driver. The driver, that's pedagogy, and this is a key distinction. We are not being driven by technology. We're not implementing all of this work and implementing these changes because technology allows us to do that, or rather, because technology is there to do that. Instead, pedagogically, all of these changes that we're about to implement make sense. And now, for the first time, we have the technology that will support this type of learning. So the car, the medium for transport is this Moodle packaging ability. So the technology is merely a means through which we can teach effectively. It isn't the means of our teaching. It's just a medium through which we can teach this way. So once we combine appropriate pedagogy with the Moodle technology, we can allow students to really engage in a flipped learning environment that changes fundamentally the way that we think about schools, and allows students to drive their own car. It allows students to take ownership over their learning and learn at the speed that is right for them, that's comfortable for them, that's appropriate for them, so that students can get what they need when they need it. And so that all kids on a daily basis are being appropriately challenged and learning effectively, where they should be learning. A key sort of major difference that comes up right away then, if they're all learning at different paces and speeds, how does this affect grading? And I would say grading is going to fundamentally change if we adopt this new paradigm. Grades will be based purely on proficiency uh, of different material. In other words, how many different skill sets have they acquired? We will grade kids on how far they've gotten through a material rather than on static test scores on what they got on a specific day. Let me say that again. How it is now, on the chapter 1 test, students come in, they do the chapter 1 test. No matter how they do, if they got an A, they move on. If they get a D, they move on. If they got an F, they still oftentimes move on and start chapter 2. And those grades stick around for them. But kids move on, some with understanding, but many without. Many move on with a lot of misconceptions. Now, students will stay on a given topic until they become proficient, and then they move on after that. So how will we grade kids at the end of the semester? We may not use the traditional A, B, C, and D. Instead, we'll say this student has gotten through 10 different um, 10 different levels, whereas this student got through 6 different levels. It's a different way of thinking. And it's purely on go when you're ready, stop when you need to stay. Students should not be passed along year after year without proper understanding of the material, because we just further widen their misunderstandings. The chasms of misunderstanding get deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's impossible for a kid that's been passed on all throughout their education to all of a sudden get to senior year and then be expected to do the math that they're asked to do. Rather, anytime they get to a point that they don't understand, stop. Make sure you learn it. Fill in every misconception and then move on. And when we do that, all students will be kind of driving their own speeds, and the purpose of the instructor becomes to motivate them, to push them, to guide them, and to sort of herd them all in the right direction, keeping them on pace, keeping them focused, keeping them engaged. Students will be working at their own pace. So this isn't my idea. Clayton Christensen, again, writes, because schools place students in groups, when a class was ready to move on to a new concept, all students moved on, regardless of how many had mastered the previous concept, even though it might have been a prerequisite for understanding what came next. It did not matter if some percentage of students could cover the curriculum in a quarter. Everyone was stuck in the class for a full year. Whether we understood it right away and became bored with the repeated explanations, or sank deeper into bewilderment, unable to grasp the logic, we sat in the class for the duration. So what this new switch in learning allows is it gets rid of the kids bored, it gets rid of the kids that are in bewilderment, and everyone is in appropriate educational places. How will this affect the way that we teach? Fundamentally speaking, and I would agree with Brian Hassel and Emily Hassel, who argue in this recent article that I took from Marshall Memos. They say that digital education needs excellent teachers, and that a first-rate teaching profession needs digital education. We are at a place in time where both need to be met. Excellent teachers need to use excellent technology, digital education. But that digital education alone is not enough. Digital education needs to be married with excellent teaching. And when both of these things are excellent, when we have first-rate teaching and high rate of digital education, we can achieve excellence in education and flip this paradigm. This is looking at where schools could go, but there are still some questions. In fact, 3 great questions come from a teacher at Northville Mount Hermon. Question 1, he says, as a teacher, how do I keep track of the ever-widening difference between the kids that were working way ahead and those that were falling behind? We have always struggled with the spectrum of ability in a classroom. This is something that teachers have talked about for forever. I've got a weak student and a great student. How do I meet both of them on a given day? Well, now the challenge becomes different. When we switch the way that we're teaching, the challenge becomes, how do I keep track of them? And this is a great question. But I would argue, in sort of a simplistic model, really, we just need to kind of follow their progress, chart where they are, and then we meet them where they are that day. So in a class of however many students, you're following their progress on some sort of chart. Student A is at level 2, student B is at level 5. We know where they are, and we kind of group them with students according to their similar levels, and we let students work, and they're charting their progress, and we're charting their progress, and it takes a lot of courage, but we're really handing over the reins to the students. We're doing this not in a blind, trusting way. Rather, we need to be checking in with them frequently, working with them constantly. We need to be holding them accountable through regular proficiency quizzes. But the students will know where they are mapped out, and we will figure out ways to map them out ourselves, so that the role of the teacher, as far as classroom management, is working with them, motivating them, and just charting where they are on the learning progression. Next great question that he asks is, how do I answer the parent who told me I was no longer teaching and therefore her daughter was no longer learning? And this is a question that is going to come up, because it seems like we are not teaching. It appears that the teaching is fundamentally different now, or rather, not that it's different, that we're not doing anything. You create these videos, they watch the videos, they come to class, they do problems. What is the teacher doing? I would defer, rather than trying to give your own answer, I would defer to some heavy hitters in the educational world. So for one, let's think about an article from Dan Pink. And Dan Pink was looking at a teacher who was teaching using flip thinking. Uh, and if you look at the bottom paragraph, after the teacher explains their reasons for flip thinking and flip teaching, which we've talked about already, Dan Pink, great thinker, says, when the teacher puts it like that, you want to slap your forehead at the idea's inexorable logic. You wonder why more schools aren't doing it this way. That's the power of flipping. It melts calcified thinking and leads to solutions that are simple to envision and to implement. And I think, let's say that again. It melts calcified thinking and leads to solutions that are simple to envision. It is simple, and it's simple to implement. So we've got Dan Pink advocating for flip learning. Another big thinker, the leader of NAIS, Pat Bassett, in an article Towards a Professional Culture in Independent Schools, writes the following. So the fourth part of a school strategy for developing a professional culture would be to create the conditions for teams of teachers in school and online to research and apply solutions to practical challenges they face in their classrooms, closing the achievement gap, differentiating instruction, flip teaching, iPad integration, integrating sustainability and globalism, project-based learning, etc. Pat Bassett is talking about some of the main issues that independent schools are looking at in the 21st century. And one of the key ones that he talks about is flip teaching. This is not some esoteric fringe idea anymore. This is mainstream. So as we sort of gather more educators and thinkers and writers on this topic, we can refer parents to these articles, and parents will recognize that it isn't something radical that we're doing. It's something that is right and that's current with with educational technology right now. Last question. I would end up answering the same two difficult questions one-on-one 12 times over the course of 3 days instead of doing it just once. It started to feel really inefficient anyway around this. First, I would look at, where's the inefficiency? Is the inefficiency for the student, or is the inefficiency for the teacher? And I would argue that when he writes it started to feel really inefficient, that that the inefficiency was felt by him, the teacher. But the students, I would guess, I would venture, probably felt it much more, significantly more efficient. They're getting one-on-one attention with the teacher. They're feeling comfortable. They're asking the questions. every sort of misunderstanding they have, the teacher can see, can correct, can work with them on. So for the actual student, it's not inefficient. And furthermore, when a teacher may go over the difficult question in front of their 12 different students who needed help on it, are those 12 students, when they get it explained once to them, are they really learning it? Some are, but some are still going on confused. One-on-one attention works better. We know it does. But to address the issue of inefficiency in terms of time restrictions in school, it may get to the case where you don't have the time to work with each student. That would be the problem, not the inefficiency that the teacher might feel, but that there isn't enough time to reach all those students in a given class period. And so, two different case studies. Here's a student that Haley, from my school at Holderness, and over Thanksgiving there was a problem set that the students needed to do, and she had a particular problem with one of the harder questions. And recognizing that a bunch of other students probably would have similar problems with that same question, I gave a quick little I made a video that describes the theory behind the problem, that gives a couple examples of similar problems, and then it goes through some prompts on how to go about solving that problem, just as I would do if I were working with her one-on-one. Gave her this video. She said it was extremely helpful. She was able to figure out the material immediately after watching it. And now here's this help video, which I was able to pass on to other students. So I did the work once, and now a lot of students, through this sort of video one-on-one tutoring, were able to quickly acquire the same help efficiently. Speaking of efficiency, hugely efficient for me. I was able to reach a lot of students with this one video. But again, we are restricted by time. So here's another student, Zihan, excellent student, and one of the things that he wants to do to challenge himself is to start making his own videos to help students. He wants to create review videos and solution sets to all of the problems that we do in class, so that kids, if they didn't get to a problem in class, or if it didn't really make sense to them and they didn't get their question addressed, they can go to his videos and watch him explain the material, and that's getting a lot of momentum by his peers. So those are two different ways in which you can address that issue of efficiency. So this is a possible idea of where schools could go, but more than just where schools could go. I think the idea is where departments could go and where teaching can go. And if we think about some of the implications of what this student-centric learning model with these packaged courses through Moodle or whatever is the medium of the time, what the implications are for teachers is that they really need to become inexpendable. And in the same article that we were looking at earlier, from Marshall Memos, they end with this following paragraph. They say, overall, the digital future will result in fewer, better qualified lead teachers, supported by new roles such as lab monitors and tutors, working shorter hours for lower pay. The net effect, conclude Hassel and Hassel, will be a smaller but much stronger and better paid teacher workforce, supported by an array of support staff and digital tools, just as we see in most other professions. So, in other words, given some math department of size, whatever size, let's say there's 20 teachers in the math department, and we have small class sizes, which for a while was sort of the big idea in independent schools. Now we don't need to have these tiny class sizes, because with the digital medium, students are getting this one-on-one attention with their computer. So what we need, instead of a lot of teachers, we just need a handful of excellent teachers that can construct current effective curriculum and that can answer questions. We just need a handful of these teachers to construct these courses, and then the rest of the support can be supplemented by people who are just keeping kids on track, asking and answering some questions with them. But the key thing is, by needing less teachers, by needing less good teachers, we can pay for the salaries, can increase for our excellent teachers, and we can recruit and retain high level, high power thinkers and creators of education. And when we do that, the direction of schools, in my mind, will be toward student-centered learning. At the heart of that is differentiated instruction. Students will be mastering topics and be appropriately challenged at all times, every day in their work. Thank you.